Today we uncover a truth about families that bind too tightly. You'll witness Mara's quiet unraveling under the weight of her mother's invisible strings. In their dim-lit home, simple requests meet silent commands that demand compliance. Lurking unspoken is the fear of losing love entirely, leaving only exhaustion. Let's begin. The camera lingers on Mara in the dim glow of her childhood bedroom, a sanctuary turned confessional. She's perched on the edge of the bed, knees drawn up, her hands twisting the hem of her sweater like a lifeline. The room feels too small, walls papered in faded florals that whisper of better days. It's like, every breath I take has to be approved, she says, voice soft, but frayed at the edges. Mom's love comes with these invisible strings. If I pull too hard, snap, they're gone. And I'm just exhausted, pretending to be who she needs me to be, so I can be loved at all. Her eyes dart to the vanity mirror across the room, catching her reflection. Shoulders hunched, face a mask of polite endurance. The glass throws back her stiffness, a frozen portrait of the girl who's spent years mirroring everyone else's expectations. Exhaustion weighs her words, pulling them low. But as she speaks, a flicker stirs, an anxious realization blooming in her chest, sharp as a held breath. I can't even say what I want without feeling like I'm breaking us. But God, I need to breathe. Later that afternoon, the scene shifts to the family kitchen. Late afternoon light slanting through half-drawn blinds, casting long shadows over the scarred oak table. Eleana stands at the counter, chopping vegetables with rhythmic precision, her back a fortress. Mara hovers nearby, offering to help, her voice tentative. Mom, about dinner. Maybe we could try something simple tonight. I'm wiped. Silence stretches, thick as the steam rising from the pot. Elena's knife pauses, then resumes, sharper. We've always done it this way, Mara. It's what holds us together. No glance back, just that quiet command, laced with the weight of unspoken debts. Jamie slouches in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes on the floor. A silent observer, his distance a mirror to Mara's own growing rift. He doesn't speak, but his stillness amplifies the tension, the air humming with the pressure to perform, to nod and yield. Mara swallows, the words no lodging in her throat like glass. Can she voice it without shattering the fragile web they've spun? The question hangs, unanswered, as her reflection in the window pane stares back. Trapped, yet on the verge of turning away. As evening falls, the dining room light hung low, casting elongated shadows across the worn oak table, where a half-unraveled skein of yarn lay forgotten from Elena's latest knitting project. Its threads twisted into knots, mirroring the invisible pull at the heart of the meal. Mara sat rigid, fork hovering over her plate of overcooked chicken, the steam long faded like her resolve. Eleana, across from her, served seconds with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, affection laced with command. You look tired, Mara, dear, Eleana said, her voice syrupy, as she piled more potatoes onto Mara's plate. You've been out too late again, haven't you? That job of yours, it's draining you. Why not cut back? We need you here more. Mara's chest tightened, the familiar weight pressing in. The air thickened with unspoken expectations, the clink of silverware amplifying the silence from Jamie in the corner, who picked at his food, eyes flicking toward her like a quiet sentinel. She swallowed, the words bubbling up despite the knot in her throat. Mom, I am tired, not just from work, it's everything. I need space to breathe, to make plans without... Elena's fork paused midair, her smile fracturing into a furrow. Space? After all I've done? You're the one who keeps us together, Mara. Without you, who'd handle the bills, the calls? It's family. It's love. Her tone sharpened, care curdling into critique. The yarn on the table seeming to tighten as if alive, binding them all. Tension coiled in Mara's gut, rising like heat from the plates, guilt warring with a spark of defiance. Jamie shifted, his gaze steady now, a silent nod urging her on. She met Elena's eyes, voice steadying. I know you mean well, but I can't keep sacrificing myself. I need boundaries, or I'll break. The room held its breath, Elena's hand hovering over the tangled thread, fingers itching to pull it taut. Could Mara claim her voice without the backlash crashing down? The question lingered, unanswered, as the yarn's knots gleamed under the light. A fragile web on the verge of unraveling. In the quiet aftermath, the camera follows Mara into her dimly lit bedroom, the door creaking softly behind her like a reluctant exhale. She moves with the weight of unseen anchors, her steps muffled on the worn carpet. It's late afternoon, sunlight slanting through half-drawn blinds, casting elongated shadows that dance across the walls. Mara pauses at the vanity, her fingers brushing the edge of the old wooden frame before lifting the camera's gaze to the mirror. There she is, or they are. On the left, the reflection she knows too well. The vibrant daughter, hair tousled just so, eyes bright with the practiced smile that blooms for family mornings. That Mara laughs easily at Elena's stories over coffee, nods through the subtle directives wrapped in affection. You look tired, dear. Let me fix that for you. It's a performance, seamless and exhausting. The one that keeps the peace, the one that earns the fleeting warmth of approval. But turn her head slightly, and the other Mara emerges, unbidden, in the right-hand edge of the glass. Hollow-cheeked, shadows pooling under her eyes, shoulders slumped as if carrying the invisible load of every unspoken expectation. This one doesn't perform. She just endures. The fatigue isn't a flaw, she tells herself now, staring harder, willing the words to stick. It's a signal, a quiet rebellion against the enmeshment that pulls her under like tangled threads. Why does love always demand this erasure? Elena's care, so insistent, so controlling. It sees only the dutiful girl, not the woman fraying at the seams. Mara's breath hitches, her hand pressing flat against the cool glass. The touch sends a ripple through her reflection, blurring the divide for a moment. She's tired, bone-deep, soul-weary tired, of bridging these two selves. But in that fracture, something stirs, a resolve hardening like frost on the window pane across the room. Therapy, she thinks. Dr. Klein's calm voice echoing in her mind, naming the patterns she couldn't. No more silence. No more self-sacrifice disguised as devotion. She straightens, just a fraction, eyes locking on the mirrored gaze that finally meets her own. Jamie watches from the doorway, a silent silhouette, offering no words. Just the quiet solidarity of someone who's seen this split before. The question lingers, unanswered in the air. How can she live as both Maras without one devouring the other? Seeking clarity, Mara enters the therapy room, which felt like a cocoon. Walls lined with soft beige cushions, and a single potted fern wilting slightly in the corner. Mara sat on the edge of the couch, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. A subconscious knot she couldn't untangle. Dr. Klein leaned forward in her armchair, glasses perched on her nose, her voice steady as a metronome. I've been listening to you describe this pull toward your mother, Mara. The way her approval feels like oxygen, and without it, everything tightens. What you're experiencing, it's toxic attachment. Not because the love isn't there, but because it's enmeshed, like threads wound so tightly around your sense of self that pulling one risks unraveling everything. Mara's breath hitched. Toxic? The word landed like a slap, sharp and unwelcome. Her mind reeled, images flashing of Elena's warm hugs laced with expectations, the endless calls that demanded her time, her energy, her very thoughts. But it's love, she protested, voice cracking. She's my mom. If it's toxic, does that mean I have to cut her out? Lose her? Fear clawed up her throat, visions of isolation flooding in. Empty holidays, Jamie's distant gaze turning colder, her own reflection in the mirror hollowed out. Dr. Klein nodded, unfazed, her eyes kind but insistent. Love doesn't vanish because we name the pain. Toxic attachment hurts because it blurs boundaries. Your emotions become hers, her needs eclipse yours. It's not sacrifice, it's suffocation. Think of it like this tangled thread in your hands. She reached for a skein of yarn from her desk, holding it up, knotted, frayed ends spilling over her palm. See how it's beautiful in its weave, a family bond. But pull too hard, and it chokes. Real love allows space to breathe, to be separate yet connected. Mara stared at the yarn, her fingers mirroring the twist in her lap. Confusion swirled. How could something so familiar be wrong? Yet a flicker ignited. The exhaustion after every concession, the way Elena's "I need you" always came with invisible strings. Was this why therapy felt like the first unforced breath? So, I can care for her without giving up me? The question hung, unanswered, as realization dawned. Care didn't demand erasure. Boundaries weren't betrayal. They were the first loose thread toward freedom. Dr. Klein smiled faintly. That's the work ahead. We'll untangle it together. Mara nodded, the skein still vivid in her mind. Eleana a shadow at the door of her heart. Jamie watching from the wings. New rules whispered. Respect the knot, but don't let it bind. In their next session, the therapy room felt like a quiet cage. Soft light filtering through half-drawn blinds onto the worn leather couch where Mara sat, knees drawn up, fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. Der Hafter Klein leaned forward in her armchair, her voice steady as a metronome, eyes kind but unyielding. Imagine it, Mara, she said, gesturing with open hands. Your family is a tapestry of threads, woven tight, pulling in every direction. Yours starts soft, pink and yielding, looping around Elena's bolder red strand. But see how it tangles. Where her thread cinches yours, that's not just connection. That's control disguised as care. Mara's brow furrowed, a flicker of confusion clouding her face. She shifted, the couch creaking under her. But isn't that what mothers do? Hold on so tight because they love you? If I pull away. Her voice trailed, laced with doubt, as if voicing it might unravel everything. Dr. Klein nodded, reaching for a small hand mirror from the side table. A simple, silver-framed thing that caught the light like a reluctant confession. She held it up, angling it toward Mara. Look here. Not just at your reflection, but through it. The mirror shows the roles you've worn. The dutiful daughter, the fixer, the one who absorbs the hurt so Eleana doesn't have to. But whose face is that really? Yours, or the one she's threaded into you? Mara peered in, her breath catching. The glass revealed her own tired eyes, shadowed by unspoken pleas. But now she saw the pull, the invisible cords tugging at her posture, her smile. A woven thread, intricate and binding, snaked across her mind's eye. Elena's expectations coiling around her wrists, her choices, her very breath. It feels like love, Mara whispered, voice cracking. If I cut those threads, what's left? Just me, alone, unraveling the whole family? That's the argument we all make at first. Dr. Klein replied gently, her tone a bridge over the tension. Care becomes control when it demands your erasure. Feel the difference. True nurture lets you stand straight. This? She mimed a knot with her fingers. It bends you until you forget your shape. Eleana called, insisting I come over. Said she needed me to help with the garden, but I knew it was more. Always more. Her voice cracks, fatigue etching lines around her mouth. She's tired, bone deep, from the endless pull of it all. The way her mother's affection twists into expectation, leaving her hollow. Cut to the family home, sunlight slanting through the kitchen window like fragile hope. Mara stands by the sink, phone in hand, Jamie hovering in the doorway, arms crossed, silent as ever. Mom, I can't tonight, Mara says, the words tasting foreign, empowered, yet terrifying. I need some time for myself. Elena's voice sharpens over the line, a velvet blade. Time for yourself? After everything I've done? You're breaking my heart, Mara. What kind of daughter turns away when her mother asks? The words land like hooks, yanking at Mara's resolve. She glances at the window, the glass reflecting her wavering silhouette. Trapped between the warmth inside and the vast, uncertain world beyond. The pain fogs slightly from her quickened breath, blurring the garden view, as if the boundary she's trying to draw is already smudging. Back in the studio, Mara's hands tremble in her lap. She didn't yell, not really. But it was worse. Guilt? Like I'm the villain for wanting space. I hung up feeling empty, like I'd shattered something irreplaceable. The fatigue shifts, coiling into anxiety, her pulse racing as old fears flood back, the family unraveling, her place in it gone. Jamie had texted later. You did right. A quiet nod. But it doesn't quiet the storm. Elena's control, so loving in disguise, undermines her every step, sabotaging the fragile map Dr. Klein's been helping her weave. Dr. Klein leans forward. And now? Does saying no feel like losing them? Mara's gaze drifts to the studio window, rain-streaked and open to the gray street below, a sliver of possibility, unbroken yet. She doesn't answer, the question hanging heavy. Can she refuse and still feel safe in their love? The anxiety revives, sharp and insistent. But beneath it, a flicker. Refusal not as fracture, but as the first clear breath through that glass. The following morning brings a tentative step forward in the kitchen, where sunlight filtered through the half-open window, casting long shadows across the wooden table where Mara sat, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of chamomile tea. The air smelled of fresh bread she'd baked earlier, not for anyone else, but for herself. This was her ritual now. Mornings claimed, no longer surrendered to the pull of family demands. Jamie lingered by the counter, pouring coffee, their movements deliberate, unhurried. I tried it last night, Mara said, her voice soft, edged with the vulnerability of untested ground. Told Mom I couldn't make the call. She said I'd regret it, that I'd be alone. The words hung, stirring the old guilt like sediment in water. Elena's voice echoed in her mind, a distant thunder. How can you do this to us? Jamie set the mug down, eyes meeting Mara's. Not with pity, but quiet alliance. And you didn't call. That's huge. They slid into the chair opposite, leaning forward. What if we did this more? Mornings like this. No strings, just us. Figuring out what free looks like. Mara's fingers tightened on the mug, heart quickening. The window caught her eye, open just enough to let in a breeze that rustled the curtains, a whisper of space beyond the room's confines. She stood, crossing to it, pushing the pane wider. Cool air rushed in, carrying the faint hum of the city waking. "Free?" she echoed, turning back. "Like this? Supporting each other without the weight?" Jamie nodded, rising to join her. They stood side by side, gazing out at the street below, people moving, unbound. "Yeah, I want that for us. No more tiptoeing around her moods. We can be siblings without the script." A phone buzzed on the table, Elena's name flashing. Mara froze, the vulnerability spiking, a pull toward apology. But she let it ring, the sound fading into silence. Instead, she reached for Jamie's hand, squeezing once. Confidence bloomed, steady as the light spilling across the floor. "Let's make it real. Starting now." As the breeze lifted the curtains higher, Mara wondered, could love hold like this? Support without the hidden chains? The window stayed open, framing the possibility. Building on this resolve, the confrontation escalates in the dim light of the therapy studio, which filtered through half-drawn blinds, casting long shadows across the worn couch where Mara sat, her hands twisting a loose thread from the hem of her sweater. It had unraveled over weeks, a tangled mess mirroring the knots in her chest, each pull tightening the bind to Eleana, her mother, who now paced the room like a storm cloud ready to burst. "I can't do this anymore, Mom," Mara said, her voice a fragile thread, exhausted from the weight of unsaid no's. The words hung in the air, her first real boundary. No more dropping everything for Elena's endless crises. No more evening sacrifice to soothe the guilt Eleana wielded like a weapon. Dr. Klein nodded from her chair, the therapy map spread on the low table between them. A web of colored threads charting Mara's enmeshment, new nodes waiting to be pinned. Elena's face crumpled, accusations spilling out sharp and hot. "You're abandoning me. After everything I've done, you're selfish, Mara, tearing us apart." Tears streamed down her cheeks, her hands clutching at her throat as if the sobs were choking her. She collapsed into the armchair, a dramatic wilt that pulled at every old instinct in Mara. The reflex to rush forward, to apologize, to weave herself back into the suffocating embrace. The room thickened with tension, external barbs from Eleana clashing against the internal roar in Mara's mind. Give in, fix it, or lose her forever. Jamie sat quietly in the corner, eyes steady on Mara, a silent anchor amid the chaos. No words, just a subtle nod. "You've got this," reminding her of their stolen morning ritual. The quiet coffee shared without demands, a thread of trust unbroken. Mara's breath came ragged, exhaustion clawing at her edges, making her limbs heavy. The tangled thread in her fingers snapped free, coiling uselessly in her palm. She could feel the pull, the old habit whispering surrender, self-erasure as the only path to peace. But Dr. Klein's voice cut through, calm and precise. "Pin it, Mara, that node, where control masquerades as love." With trembling fingers, Mara reached for the marker, dotting a fresh red mark on the map. The choice crystallized, exhaustion yielding to a quiet resolve hardening in her core. "No, Mom, this isn't betrayal. It's me, finally breathing." Elena's cries peaked, a desperate bid for submission. But Mara held her ground, the question lingering unspoken in the charged silence. Could she keep this no intact, even as emotional blackmail tugged at the frayed edges of their bond? Jamie's gaze met hers again, affirming the shift, Elena's control tightening like a noose, but Jamie's support a lifeline, proving boundaries weren't walls, but windows to safety. Love, Mara realized, didn't demand her unraveling. Her no was the thread that set her free. In the days that follow, Mara seeks a private reckoning in the kitchen light, which hung low casting shadows across the wooden table where Mara and Eleana sat. Cups of cooling tea untouched between them. Mara's fingers twisted the edge of a napkin, shredding it into thin, fraying strips. Like the tangled thread she'd imagined in therapy, binding her life to this woman's expectations. Her heart hammered, anxiety coiling tight in her chest. But she forced her gaze up. This was the boundary Dr. Klein had mapped. Speak the truth, or let the knot tighten forever. "Mom," Mara began, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I need to tell you something. It's hard, but your love, the way it wraps around me, it's suffocating sometimes. Like I can't breathe without checking if you're okay first. Remember last week when I said no to dinner? You cried, and I felt like the worst daughter alive. But that's the pain. It makes me disappear." Eleana leaned back, her face paling, eyes widening as if slapped. She clutched her mug, knuckles whitening. "Disappear? Mara, everything I do is for you, for us. I've given up so much. How can you say that? Am I the villain now?" Mara's breath caught, the old guilt surging like a wave, urging her to fold, to apologize and mend the tear. But she pressed on, actions deliberate. She pushed the shredded napkin aside, straightening her spine. "No, Mom, you're not a villain. I know you love me. But love shouldn't feel like this. Like a thread pulling me back every time I step away. It's control, even if you don't mean it. I've spent years saying yes to keep you happy, sacrificing pieces of myself. And it hurts. Deeply." Eleana's lips parted, a flush creeping up her neck. She reached across the table, hand hovering, then withdrawing, as if burned. I never realized. You think I'm hurting you? All those times I needed you, it was because you're my rock. Without that, what are we?" The air thickened, tension humming between them. Eleana's defensiveness clashing with Mara's resolve. Mara felt the shift inside, anxiety ebbing into a quiet clarity, like untangling one stubborn loop. Her no wasn't betrayal. It was the first real yes to herself. "We're family, Mom, but we can be more than this knot. I want us to try, honestly, with space, can we?" Eleana stared at the napkin remnants, her eyes glistening but unyielding. The thread lay there, metaphor made real, neither severed nor straightened. Mara held her breath, the question unspoken yet palpable. Could words like these bridge the gap, or would they fray the bond beyond repair? For now, the silence stretched, a fragile opening. As dawn breaks on a new routine, Mara's apartment hummed with the quiet of early dawn, the kind that pressed against her skin like a half-remembered obligation. Her hands, still trembling from a night of fragmented sleep, reached for the small ceramic holder on the windowsill. The candle waited there, unlit. A simple beeswax stub she'd bought on impulse after her last session with Dr. Klein. A marker for mornings that belonged only to her. Exhaustion clung to her like fog, whispering the old litany. Eleana's voice on the phone last night, laced with that familiar plea. "We need you, Mara. Don't pull away now." The pull was visceral, a tangle of threads yanking at her chest, demanding she drop everything and drive over, soothe the storm she'd stirred by saying no to another family dinner. But she didn't. Instead, she struck the match. The flame caught, flickering orange against the muted gray of the room, and she watched it steady, her breath sinking with its pulse. She sank onto the woven rug, knees drawn up, palms open on her lap. The ritual was new, fragile. 5 minutes of nothing but this light, this breath. No checking texts from Eleana, no replaying Jamie's tentative text. "Proud of you for holding ground. Just the act of being here, claiming the space. Her mind rebelled at first, fatigue sharpening into doubt. What if this was selfish? The family history loomed, a shadow of sacrifices etched into her bones. Nights spent mending Elena's moods, mornings lost to Jamie's silences. Choosing herself felt like cutting the line, risking the drift into isolation. Could she really hold this? When every fiber screamed to give in, to keep the peace at her own expense. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth build. The candle's scent rose, soft vanilla threading through the air. And outside, the first light cracked the horizon. It spilled through the window in a slant of gold, catching the flame and multiplying it across the glass panes. The window, once just a frame for the city's indifferent sprawl, now held something else. A breath of possibility, unbarred. Mara opened her eyes, tracing the beam as it warmed her face, dissolving the chill of doubt. Her shoulders eased, the tremor in her hands fading. This wasn't erasure. It was insistence. Honesty with herself first. Boundaries not as walls, but as air to breathe. Jamie's words echoed faintly, a quiet anchor from the edges, while Elena's shadow lingered off-frame, the truth of their last talk. A raw kitchen confession, still humming unspoken. But here, in this glow, Mara felt the shift. Confidence rooting deep, a forward pull. She chose this light, this self, letting the old debts fade against the window's promise.